Have you ever believed something about God deep in your heart, but wasn't quite sure it was really true until you found it staring back at you from the pages of Scripture? That's what happened to me when I once again came across Isaiah 7. It's the story of the prophet offering hope to King Ahaz during a national crisis. Fear had taken hold, enemies surrounded Judah, and the king was tempted to place his trust in human solutions rather than God. Yet, in the middle of that uncertainty, God extended an extraordinary invitation. Ask thee a sign of the Lord thy God. Ask it either in the depth or in the height above. When I read those words, I had to pause because God wasn't merely allowing King Ahaz to ask for a sign. He was inviting him to ask, and not for something small or ordinary. God essentially said, ask for something as deep as the grave or as high as the heavens above. That struck me because many of us have come to believe that asking God for great things is unrealistic. We believe he can do extraordinary things, but we often assume those things are reserved for others. We hear testimonies of answered prayers and celebrate what God has done for others, yet quietly lower our expectations when it comes to our own lives. The truth is, many of us have faith for God to bless a church, a ministry, or a worthy cause. But when it comes to our own needs, our own calling, our own healing or direction, we become hesitant. We don't want to seem selfish. We don't want to appear entitled. So we ask for less than what we truly need, or sometimes, sadly, we stop asking altogether. What stood out to me in this passage is that God's invitation to Ahaz was personal. He wasn't asking him to pray for a building project or a ministry campaign. He was inviting him to ask for something that would strengthen his own confidence in God, and yet he refused. What's interesting is that his refusal sounded spiritual. He said, I will not ask. If we heard those words today, we might think that sounded so humble. But God already asked him, invited him to ask. So his refusal wasn't faith, it was distance. God was offering reassurance, and Ahaz had already decided to trust something else. It made me wonder how often we do the same thing. How often do we call something faith when it's really just distrust from disappointment? How often do we stop bringing certain issues to God because we've prayed for so long, we've stopped expecting anything to happen? For so many people, especially those who have experienced hardship, rejection, poverty, or repeated disappointments, the challenge isn't believing that God is powerful. The challenge is believing that God is personally interested in them. They believe he answers prayers, yes. They just aren't sure he wants to answer theirs. But Scripture tells a different story, and God graciously meets us where we are. He's not offended by our need for reassurance. In fact, he helps us grow through it. Now, please believe me, this isn't a prosperity message. Faith isn't demanding things from God. Faith isn't trying to manipulate him into giving us whatever we want. Scripture's clear on those matters. But there's another danger we don't talk about enough. Sometimes we become so concerned about asking for the wrong thing that we stop asking for anything. Faith isn't entitlement. It's confidence in God's character. It's trusting that the God who answers prayers for others also hears ours. It's believing that we're welcome in his presence and that he cares about the things that concern us. And perhaps that's what Isaiah 7 reminds us. God was inviting Ahaz to bring him something impossible, something beyond his own strength, wisdom, and resources, something that required God to be God. And maybe that's his invitation to us as well. Bring him the things you can't solve, the doors you can't open. Bring him the wisdom you don't have. Bring him the healing you can't create, the burdens that you've been carrying alone. Ask, not because you deserve ordinary answers, extraordinary answers, but because you have an extraordinary Father. And then trust him with the answer. Because faith isn't merely believing that God can. Faith is believing that the God who can is willing to hear and answer you. Have a great rest of your Sunday and a wonderful week. And remember, ask.